This is Beach Talk Radio.
Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. This is your captain speaking, Mean Gene. Mean Gene. The following will be a test of the ship's whistle, the sonar alarm, the cable alarm, and the atomic attack alarm.
Oh, isn't that hair fabulous? Broadcasting live from the new hotspot on Fort Myers Beach. Wahoo Willies! It's time for another exciting award-winning episode of Beach Talk Radio. Here are your humble hosts, Kim and Ed Ryan.
Well, we're not broadcasting live from Wahoo Willie's tonight. We are live from the Diamond Head Resort. And my little sticky note was upside down, so I hit the wrong button there. But it is episode number 30 of Mondays with the Mayor. I want to thank everyone here at Diamond Head for being so nice and hosting us for another episode of the show. And we are here the first Monday of every month, and it just so happened that the first last week was Tuesday, but I don't think you were in town by last Monday anyway, so it worked out fine. No. Yep. And you're back from your vacation and right into a 6-hour meeting. So
is that how long it was?
Before we get to that, a portion of our show today is sponsored by the Landau Law Group. If your insurance company has not paid your claim at this point, they are not operating in good faith, and you should call the Landau Law Group to get some help and get some of your money back. 866-703-4878. That's 866-703-4878. You deserve the money to rebuild your home. Give them a call, and they will help you out today. So what was your conclusion of how the meeting went today? You happy with the results of the first meeting back?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it was a marathon. There was a lot of things jammed into that agenda. I think it went as smooth as it could. There was a lot of variances that were in there. And
that you opposed? Why are you opposed to the variances?
Well, I wasn't opposed to all of them. I mean, the point I made about the lots is the size that can be built on those lots that were presented today were you could build twice the size of what you had, essentially, if you built it within the footprints without having to ask for a variance. And that was the point that I was just trying to get across, that the homeowner has chosen to go with. And I think that's why the staff, in fact, I know that's why the staff recommended denial, was because it was a design decision. Things could be built close to the same footprint or the same square footage as what they were proposing. But because it was I can't remember exactly how Samir puts it, like a prefab, but sorry.
So they're asking for setback changes, and whether it's in the front of the house or the back of the house, the side of the house, they want setback changes to take a structure that is pretty much pre-made and fit it into a lot.
I mean, and I understand that the point behind it is, you know, how many screws it takes, you know, how many pieces of lumber it takes, you know, how many shingles it takes. Everything is very easy. It's very economical. And I totally understand that. But as I said in the meeting, one of the requirements to approve these variances is not economics. And that was the reason I was opposed to it. I'm happy that they're going to be getting a home, and I'm happy they're going to be able to come back to the island. But I don't think that we should just automatically approve things because of finances or because this is what one builder does. There's several builders out there that can design custom homes that can fit within a footprint. Yeah, they could say it costs a little bit more. Maybe it does. But at the end of the day, like the last one, I tried to make the point that if you were to just shave off the wraparound deck, you could eliminate 2 of the 4 asks by simply taking off that one corner and shifting it over and be able to. The side setbacks for me was a big thing because we've heard from the fire department that it's a safety issue. And, you know, when you're talking about safety issues, you got to be very cognizant of that. So I opposed all 4, and I'm not sorry that I did.
So the variances usually come forward if there's some kind of hard case, or what do they call it? Not a hard case, but
well, it's circumstances essentially that are outside of your control.
Right, and some are arguing that
extraordinary circumstances.
All right, some would argue that the reason that they're asking for it is the hurricane caused some extraordinary circumstances.
Well, sure, and I agree with that. That you know, they're not asking for this variance because they wanted to. They're asking for it because their house was taken away. And we're all sympathetic to that. But when you look at the actual dimensions of these properties that they were proposing today, the footprint was 35 by 31 or 35 by 32 that you could build by right without asking for anything. then you add the second story to that, you're going to have double the footprint that you had before. The only argument that I heard was, well, it's not cost effective, or this is cheaper, and that's not one of the criteria. Now, if we want to have a discussion as a council and as an LPA that becomes a criteria, then let's have that discussion. I'm all for it. But the way we are supposed to look at the land development code and make the decisions on these, it did not fit all that criteria. So that's why I voted against it.
And the LPA wasn't unanimous, but they did
I think
approve.
one of them they were, and a couple of them were 3-2, and one was 4-3, I think, if I remember correctly.
And the votes today were 3-2, except for one, I think was 4-1.
Right.
And so do you think that this is going to set some kind of precedent for all the builders coming forward and say, well, listen, the hurricane caused this and you've given out these setbacks, so I'm going to ask for mine?
Well, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but obviously we've I think approved 4, 5, 6 of these. I don't even know how many yet for homebound. And again, I'm thankful that people are going to get back in their homes. I really am. Even if it's not their full-time home, it's still their home. It's still something that they invested a lot of money in, and I'm glad that they're going to get what they want. But my vote was strictly because there is other ways that you could have made something fit within that footprint and not had to ask for those variants by right.
Okay, well, that will definitely be interesting to watch as the weeks and months go forward. One of the things that I thought was interesting today when you approved the new contract for the new attorney was that she said that before the storm, John Herron was charging the taxpayers $25,000 a month. And after the storm, he was charging them. The town was broken. The budget was, the money was gone, and he raised his fees to $31,000 a month. I thought that was ridiculous. And for it to come out like that, the guy was ripping off the taxpayers.
That's not exactly true.
Okay.
He was not working. So Boss is a one flat fee that covers everything that you need. Phone calls, everything like that is included in what was approved today. What John and his firm had was not that. So they averaged about $25,000 a month pre-storm. After the storm, obviously calls were coming in, contracts had to be approved. There was far more things that he had to be involved in. So that's what drove that price from 25 to 31. It wasn't because he upped his rates. It wasn't because he did anything other than he was doing more work than what he had previously done. So I thought the contract that was proposed today for the $25,000 was fair. I can tell you, I've worked with Becky now and Nancy to a little extent, and their response is phenomenal. When you ask them a question, they understand. When you make points about some of the things that get worded and get sent out, she agrees. She's working on trying to find better ways to say things. I'm not a big fan of must and you have to type wording. So she's working on stuff like that, but she's been very responsive on anything that you ask her to do, even on Sundays in the middle of the day. So it's refreshing.
But do you think it was fair for Herron to charge $31,000 a month after the storm and never be around? Like, he was never in town. You can never find the guy.
Well,
during the storm,
fair is relative. Fair is he was charging what his fees and his rates were that we all agreed to. So if he's doing more work and those fees and those rates allow him to charge those for things that he's doing more than he normally did it before the storm, that's the cost. I can tell you that there was a lot of discussions before Andy got here with Chris and myself and Keith, and we started seeing some of these bills come in and they were much higher than what they were. It's like, well, we got to drill down on this and figure out what's going on. Where's this extra cost coming in? Even before Joe got here, this was all before him. And
Joe's the CFO for anyone that doesn't know.
Yeah. So, you had to look at that and say, wait a minute, we got to, so the staff that was here that was brought down through FD, through Florida, they worked from Jacksonville. They worked very hard to go through this piece by piece, line by line, and make sure exactly what we were being charged for was legitimate. So they spent a lot of time and a lot of countless hours looking at some of this billing and making sure that it was appropriate and that it was right to pay it. And they were.
Was it all legitimate?
It was. It
Okay.
was. Yeah.
Whether it's legitimate or not, you think that.
Well, you look at it and you're like, whoa, how does this all of a sudden go from because I was I'm one of the people that has to sign the checks, and you look at this and when things catch your eye, you're like, wait a minute, I need to see more information. And I would push back on some of the things and staff would provide it. And then you could go from there, and they did their work and their homework and research and everything was on the up and up. There was nothing nefarious about it. It was just
That he charged more.
He was doing more work. He
Yeah.
was charging exactly
Everybody
what
was
we
doing
agreed
more
to,
work
but
back then.
yeah, right. So, but
Uh,
that's the past, and we've got a new attorney, we've got a new town manager. We're moving forward and full steam ahead.
Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but something's been going on in the community for the last 6 days. Down the street a little bit, there's a resident that's been sitting on the hot roof for 6 days, and he's going to make a statement at 6 o'clock tonight. My guess is he's finally going to come down, no matter what happened with FEMA representatives from Friday. What is your take on the whole situation?
Well, first, I didn't find out about it until at the end of the meeting when Karen brought it up that he was going to have that thing at 6. Obviously, I'll probably still be here, so I won't be able to be there in person, but we'll definitely be. I think you said you're going to carry it live at 6 after we're done, so I'll be able to see what he says. But I apologize to Rick and Amy that I won't be able to be there in person, but I'll be watching. I'll watch it from here since we're going to be done and see what is said. But it's unfortunate. I tried to say it at the beginning of the meeting, and I probably didn't do a very good job. But Amy and Rick have been very good stewards of this island for decades, and they work in PTO, they worked in they work in Little League and things like that. And what a lot of people don't know, and maybe I probably shouldn't say this, but I think everybody knows by now, is they're the ones that went back to Publix and paid them for the money. They were one of the first people that I saw when I walked by that was coming out of Publix with stuff, and they went back to Publix after it opened and wrote them a check. That's the type of people that they are.
Right. And just
so
to be more
asking
specific,
for anything.
in case anyone doesn't know, they did go to Publix. I don't know if it was the day of the storm or after the storm, and took some stuff.
The storm,
because they needed to eat or whatever. And
they lost their entire house.
Yep.
And they, like everyone else, were going in and getting the supplies that they need that they lost. No one expected that devastation to happen. And even though you may have planned for the things that you thought you were going to need after the storm, when your house is completely gone and everything in it is gone, then you have nothing. So you have to do what you have to do to survive. And they did, but they came back the very first day that Publix was open. They went in and they handed them a check. But that's just the type of people that they are. So I completely sympathize with what they're going through. I think that they understand that the town council and the staff is going to do everything that we can within our power to work on their behalf to try to get them. But at the end of the day, it really is not our decision. It comes down from FEMA and then through the state and then to us, and we have to follow certain regulations. And I'm hoping the information that he got today or whatever he's going to share at 6 o'clock is positive for everybody. But I think they understand now that the entire council stands behind them. And being someone that has built things in the past and understands, I always want to look at things and think there's other ways around it. I understand what the code says and I understand why it's there, and I completely get it. We could say that building survived, that building went through a hurricane. I think I've heard Rick say and Amy say that it helped save their lives. And so obviously the building was built to what it needed to do. Is there a way to put static vents in there to allow water to go through if it goes through? And you could talk about attached, not attached, and all that kind of things. And the rules are the rules, and I get it. And I think they understand. I think Amy did a very good job today of speaking at public comment. It was very, very much appreciated. But I'm hoping that we can come to a resolution that works for everybody.
So is the way this went down, the town buildings department interpreted the original permits that the house was somehow attached to the garage. The storm came through, knocked the house out. The garage was standing, the shed was standing, the pool's still there, but that Steve's determination was it was attached. Whether it was attached with caulk or whatever is irrelevant. He determined it was attached, and that is what the state is looking at to say, okay.
Well, I mean, on our drive back, Megan was sitting beside me the entire time, and she's reading through because as you're driving, you got time, so she's reading through their permits. It was permitted as a lateral structure. It was permitted. There's nothing in there that I think you could argue that says that it wasn't attached. That it was attached. How it was attached, we can argue that all day long. But it was through the permit. It was, I think, and that if I'm not mistaken, there were an appraisal both from FEMA and through private that clearly say in the appraisals that it was an attached structure. So again, we don't to argue over whether it was attached or not attached. It was attached. I mean, whether it was attached by caulk or not, it was attached based on everything that I've seen and everything that I read. So to pin this specifically on Steve, I don't think is fair. I think Steve can make determinations, and I think maybe what Steve's determination was, and I can't speak for Steve, maybe led into where Mr. Cole and the state floodplain manager got involved. I'm not a big fan, and I'll say this flat out. I'm not a big fan of passing the buck.
Mhm.
If you make a decision, make a decision. And if it's not the right decision, it's not the right decision. You learn from it, you move forward. I don't know if this was the right or the wrong decision, but at the end of the day, the state floodplain manager did weigh in. You posted it. You did the story on it. How do you find the solution? Let's get back. How we got here is how we got here, but how do we find a solution to it? How can we try to help a resident as much as we can, but still stay in compliance with what we have to do to be able to get the best outcome? Hopefully it's a positive one. I really do hope it's a positive one. I hope that the FEMA representatives were able to look at it and say, okay, this makes sense. Like I said, you have to put 6 hydrostatic vents in, or you have to do something to make it work. But obviously the building, when it was built, did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah.
It withstood the storm, the worst storm in Florida
On the
history.
most basic level, do you realize how silly this is? Like, he might have to take his garage down. Bill Veach's garage withstood the storm. And he's, after a 6-month fight, he's come to the conclusion that he needs to take it down. All the smart people, not all the smart people agree. Some people disagree with, how it was attached. Or, I mean, you see all the people that are disagreeing. But at the end of the day, it's Steve's license on the line. 10 years from now, something happens, and they bring this back up.
Sure.
He's got to make what he thinks is the right decision, and this was the decision he made.
Well, and unfortunately for Steve, he was thrust into a position 4 days after starting with the town to have to make decisions. And as you said, he's the licensed person to do it.
Right.
He is the one that has to make that decision. His job is to protect the town. That's his job.
Yeah.
And if you make a decision that maybe benefits 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 homeowners at the paramount of the rest of the town, that's obviously not a very good decision. And I think that maybe that's why Steve made that decision. I don't know. I'm not in Steve's head. I haven't talked to Steve. I don't know why this decision was made, but it was a lateral structure. It was attached. There's no disputing that. In my opinion, it says that. So now that puts into play what we're all discussing. But again, you have to try to, in my opinion, try to find some common sense in this. And is there a way to make this work for everybody? Is there a way, just because it did something this way 10 years ago doesn't mean that there's not a better way to do it now. So if anything, this storm, I think, has done, and I'm guessing, can't speak for FEMA or the state, but I think what they do is every single storm, they look at what they can do better, and they can implement change for the next storm. And the next storm that happens to somebody in the state of Florida, they're going to have to deal with what they dealt with the town of Fort Myers Beach. What worked, what didn't work, what can we implement better to make the next response even better? And they'll learn from that one.
Right. I don't know if I said this on the show Saturday, or maybe I was just talking to Kim about it. The town is trying to take care of the people now, and FEMA doesn't care about now. FEMA cares, and I'm oversimplifying it, but they are looking longer term because of the destruction that can happen from a storm like this. So I get that.
Well, I think one thing that FEMA can stand proud on is that the requirements that they have and that the state has, it has shown that it works, right? Mm-hmm. You can look up and down the island after the storm. You can see the buildings that have survived. So those codes and those regulations are there for a reason. Now, it doesn't mean that there's ways not to tweak it or change it or make things better, but they're there for a reason. Those buildings are still standing. People have homes to come back to because of those regulations. And unfortunately, we lost 1,000 structures or a little over 1,000 structures. And now we have to rebuild those back, which are going to be built back to the new code. And the code 10 years from now could maybe be a little bit different.
So Amy is watching, and she said FEMA had a meeting about them today, but they won't return her phone calls or messages. So we'll find out more at 6 o'clock. So a couple other things. I had an interview with Andy before the show on Saturday, and he has some ideas about Town Hall and Bay Oaks being in one building over on the town property over there. If the town is able to swap property with the fire department and the Tops property, what is your take on that? Should they all be in one building?
Well, I think it certainly makes sense financially as well as time-wise. It makes sense. You have a building that we already had set up through BORCAB meetings and through town council discussion to build something that was going to be a hardened structure. And I try to look at things of, imagine if that building was in place before this storm. The people that we lost in that storm would have had a safe place that they could have gone, been elevated, got out of the wind, and they would have probably still been here today. So if we can make a building that can house all of that. It's the heart of the island. It's a community area. The parking, I don't remember exact numbers, 130, 160 parking spots without the potential swap of the fire department and the town's property. We could really have something special there. It's a building that's ready to go. It's just a matter of adding a couple extra stories to it. In our conversations, I don't know if he shared it. I haven't gotten through the entire interview that you had with him. I was about halfway through before I came back. We talked about, remember, there was that phase 2 part of it that was going to be where the gym was. I think the concept is very, very smart. I think, again, it'll save time. It's something that is very close to permit ready. We could get into the ground very quickly. We have nothing we have to worry about clearing out of the way.
Right.
It allows us to get that phase 2 brought in. And this is all conversations we've had with FEMA through Tidal Basin and that. So all this money that we can get recouped through appropriations and things like this to make a very good community center in one area that still provides the Bay Oaks community that we all love. And potentially down the road, now we have a building in Bay Oaks that we could use as a facility for our public works to protect all the investment of all of the vehicles that we see sitting outside of the old town hall that just sit there and rot because
you're talking about the building now, the Bay Oaks building now with the gym in it. That would be a public build this. Now we have
something where we can keep the entire town government operations within one area, still provide the services that we want to provide for those at Bay Oaks, still have the pool, we still have the property. If we could swap the property, great. If we don't, we still have the property.
Yeah. And so financially wise, the town has had the money. I asked Andy about this, the loan that you had for Bay Oaks and Times Square and Bayside Park, which I thought you had to give back, but he said you probably don't have to give it back now, right? You can keep that money.
Oh, you're talking about the loan?
Yeah.
No, so the way the loan is structured is you have to draw down on it. So you have to spend the money that you can draw down on it to recoup your costs.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's my understanding. With that, though, we have the FEMA funds that we can use. So essentially, this loan is in place that we've had conversations with the bank. They've expanded on their usability of those funds, if you will. So we can use those funds to get what I don't know, it's probably not the best analogy, but what I call the FEMA engine rolling, right? Yeah. You have to spend the money to get the money back. So we have a very low interest loan that we can use to start this process. If we do it at Bay Oaks, that we can then get reimbursed from FEMA. We can harden the structure where we can get some of that mitigation funds. We can make it a 200-mile-per-hour building. We can create essentially a community center that will allow people, if we ever have to deal with this again, to be able to have a safe place to go, because not everybody had a place to go.
Right.
They had no other option than to try to ride it out in their home. And we can now provide potentially a place for people to be able to go. We could still have functional government there. We could still do things that will stand, unfortunately, if we ever have another Ian again. And I think it makes sense. It shortens our time frame, or it could potentially shorten our time frame by a year, because we've already done all that design work.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of adding the second couple of floors.
And FEMA will reimburse the town to the exact amount of what the current town hall was worth, right? That money's coming from FEMA, whatever that number determined to be, and you can use that on the top of the Bay Oaks building for
this is where you'd want to talk to someone from Tidal Basin. I will be the first to tell you, there is so much involved with how FEMA reimbursement goes through mitigation, through all these other things. They will recoup what you can do. That's what took so long, is they had to do their review to make sure that, one, the building wasn't 50% damaged, or it was 50% damaged. Obviously, we see that worked out, but there's a whole process, and I would be a fool to try to tell you I completely understand the FEMA process. That's why there are companies like Tidal Basin out there to be able to do this service for us. They do it all the time. They know exactly what they're doing. They know who to talk to, how to put things in the 404 or the 406 budget. They know what they're doing. I don't want to try to get in their way and speak for them, but majority of the money could come from them. We have ways to start that funding process. Obviously the state appropriation of $350 million we've put in for that to try to get some money back based on our initial conversations with 50,000 foot developer type things of how many square feet we may need or not need. But there's an opportunity here, I think, to be able to speed up the process, create an opportunity to get people back to a little bit of normalcy faster than having to start all over again.
One of the other things that Andy mentioned Saturday was on that property that there might be a chance for an Olympic-sized swimming pool or workforce housing. What's your feeling on?
Well, so yeah, we talked about that as soon as I got back on Friday. We were sitting there and I was asking for updates, and Andy and Frank and myself, and we talked about if you can make that swap. Potentially, and I've talked to a couple of people that are knowledgeable in the workforce housing or affordable housing arena, is how does that work? If a town has a piece of property that a developer doesn't have to spend the money on, but can develop the property.
It's off the tax rolls anyway.
So how does that work? I don't know all those answers, but a 2-acre piece of property is at least a starting point. There isn't really anything we can't, trying to accumulate little spots here and there. That's not going to work. I think we're all smart enough to understand that's not going to work, but this could potentially give us a 2 just over 2+ acre piece of property? And is there other ways to maybe accumulate things, whether it be the town hall if you swap, Chapel by the Sea, whatever? It could potentially, in an area that would work, be able to create an affordable housing solution. So
have you heard anything about Chapel by the Sea? That doesn't
not.
seem to have been touched at all.
I have not. On the way on the way down, now that you see town hall is gone, obviously Chapel by the Sea really sticks out. So, and talking to Megan on the way down, I'm like, I want to reach out to them and see what their plans are and see if there's something that we can do through the PTL or something to potentially acquire that piece of property just specifically for this. Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, they own the one right across the street from Chapel Street, that empty lot. I think that's part of theirs too. So there's an opportunity here, I think, for someone to be able to accumulate a very large piece of property that could work for affordable housing, because now it's scalable. Now it's big enough that you can do that. And I think there's an appetite to do it. There's not a lot of property to be able to do it, in my opinion, right now. And the people that I've talked to, it just doesn't financially make sense. But if there's a way we can do it, we're certainly going to try.
Just a quick one, because somebody mentioned it in the comments. Do you know anything about the CenturyLink boxes that are just laying all over the island that haven't been touched, that are smashed? Has anybody at the town had
I do not. I know there was some discussion a month or two ago with Jason about it. I know that they were supposed to be doing something with it. And I believe someone from CenturyLink came forward and they were talking about putting fiber optics in down the island. I don't have any update on that.
So there's also been a lady came today, Becky came to the town council meeting today, talk about rocks. And it seems to be the latest thing about people getting, or at least reporting, they're getting fined for rocks in their yards, or what's going on there?
Well, let me start out. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I've sent this to Andy, I've sent it to Jennifer, I've sent it to Becky, is some of the wording that we have on these violations or warnings is a little too harsh for me. I think, when you send something out and people start seeing the word violation, they just automatically in the head start thinking that this violation is going to start clicking. And that's not the case. That has to go through the magistrate. It has to do all this. But I think we could do better at wording things. Now, I did ask, because we've heard so much about this, the rock thing. It wasn't something that has changed since the storm. It was in place before. And I have numbers on how many. I know someone had asked how many people, I think it was Ron Fleming, had asked how many people had applied for a permit since the storm. And I have those numbers. They're not a significant amount of numbers. And, I've heard landscapers have said, no, you've never had to do that before. Basically what it comes down to is lots changed since the storm, right? What you had there, what you haven't had there. We can argue that. Did you build something up? Did you not build something up? But this is a common sense thing. Go out, talk to the homeowner, find out we have pictures. Everybody's seen the pictures before and after the storm. Talk to them and figure out if someone is, and I've seen it. I've seen it where our neighbor across the street, the two neighbors put rock in and they built it up, and the first rainstorm, it flooded the neighbors.
Okay.
So I understand that this is something that is in place to protect the neighbors from somebody that does something. But again, you got to use common sense. And I don't think anybody's opposed to having to go get a permit to say, I'm putting rock in, whether it's 57 rock, whatever the rock is, I'm putting it in. It's just a mechanism for the town to be able to say, okay, you're not changing the grade to drain into Ed Ryan's house and flood your basement, or, flood your pool. Or, I can tell you the house across the street from us, when they built one of the residents over there built a pool, and the two properties around it turned into an absolute swamp.
Is that where the pickleball court's going to go?
Right. All rainy season, there was 2.5 to 3 feet of standing water there. All you heard all summer long were toads and crickets, mosquitoes, and so since the storm, that has been, and now the water drains a little bit different, and everything got worked out. Everybody went out and took a look at it, and they went through the permit process. They got it all figured out.
Becky says, my house gets water because neighbor got rocks without permits. It's not fair to us either.
No, I agree. I've seen all the email chains with Becky, and
she just wanted an explanation. She sounded like she couldn't figure out.
Well, I'll tell you, and I don't blame her.
Yeah,
I've seen the email chain. I know exactly what she's talking about. She's been very polite, very diligent about stating her case. Staff has replied back, changed their mind. She wasn't wrong today a couple times, in my opinion. We have to be consistent. We have to use common sense. We have to be able to go out there, meet with the people, talk to them, understand it. And I can't speak for Becky, but I'd be willing to bet before the storm, nobody knew that you needed rock permit. Nobody ever in a million years thought you needed it.
So if your house was one way before the storm, are you allowed to just go back and put it the same way it was after the storm and not get a permit?
No,
you still need a permit.
You need a permit,
whether it's rocks or a fence or grass, or you need a permit for grass or no?
I think we're all adults here, and we can all say that not everybody follows the rules that they're supposed to follow, right?
Yeah.
And I will say the majority of
Kim's that way all the time. She hates to follow the rules.
She seems like a rebel.
I gotta put her in line.
Well, can you blame her? Look who she's married to. She's got to figure. But no, if getting a permit is the worst case scenario that you have to do, whether it's putting out rocks or pavers or whatever it is, there's things that you're doing, and it's not because the town wants to be big brother. It's to protect not only you, but protect like the demo permits, all these other things that we've talked so much ad nauseum about. This storm has amplified everything, and it's put things into perspective that weren't there before. It like the rock, it's put things in there that nobody knew about. I've talked to Commissioner Fleming, and he's like, fine, I have no problem with it. I'll pay the fine.
Yeah, the thing that was unusual, the thing that
fine, but the permit.
You mentioned something like Ron Fleming has been saying that his fines are racking up. That didn't go through any magistrate. That was like it was something happened.
That goes back to the wording of the violation that I was talking about, or the warning that I'm talking about. When you read that, if you don't, you just assume, and I would assume the same way, the way that it's worded,
that you're getting fined. That
your fines are accumulating or potentially accumulating if the magistrate feels that they want to apply that. There's a softer approach we can take to that. We can, we want you to be in compliance. We want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for yourself and for the neighbors. And, we can have policy decisions and talks about permits and what the fee is, or shouldn't there be a fee? And I'm open to having those conversations, but we really need to get better as a town. And I've told Andy this and Becky, we need to get much better at press releases, at warnings that go out, things like that. We have to be sympathetic. We cannot be, you must do this or that. Or
do you feel like, let's use Ron for an example. Everybody knows Ron. I mean, do you think that the code enforcement person went up to him and said, hey, Ron, just so you know, you need to get a permit for that? Was that approach taken? Is that approach often taken by the town? Shouldn't it be?
I learned a long time ago, there's three sides to every story. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just asking the question.
I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't speak as to what, my understanding from that is that it was the contractor there on behalf of the Flemings that the code enforcement officer talked to.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there. The code enforcement officer said they did this, they said that. The hired person said they did this, they did that.
Oh boy.
I don't know, and I don't know if either Jan or Ron were there. I don't know that either. But yes, I think it's my philosophy is that you always want to use education first. You want, just so you know, there is a permit required. If you come in and get a permit, everything will be fine. Whether it's demo, whether it's rocks, whatever it was in. Where I had an issue when I first heard about this, is this something that had changed after the storm? Is this a new policy that got put in place? Whether it was that is not the case, but we are now enforcing it because we have a lot of people watching every move that we make. So
when you say that, you mean FEMA, right? And the state. Yeah. So one of the things too, that some people have brought up was the demo permit that we talked about this 1,000 times, the demo permit that they have to get, whether their house was knocked down or going to be knocked down or was taken away by the storm. They need to get the $480 demo permit. And I was talking to an attorney just by chance the other day who said it's not the town residents' responsibility to cap off whatever needs to be capped off. It's the town's responsibility.
Well, that's a good question. I'll have to ask our attorney. I've never heard that.
Okay. So I guess that argument's going to be made at the next magistrate meeting. So it'll be interesting to see
Again, I'm not an attorney. If that's the case, then we need to correct it.
Yeah. So the rule, as you understand it now, is you need a demo permit. You need to, whether or not if the house is gone, you still need to go get it, no matter what. If your house is gone,
if you make any alterations to your, again, I'll try to. I'm not a building official, but I'll try to paraphrase it as best I've been told. If your house is gone, your pilings are there, but you're coming to take the pilings out, grade your property. Yes, you need a demo permit. If you're not doing anything with it, then you don't obviously need a demo permit. If you're not touching it, but what we're running into, or we have run into, and again, as you said, we've talked about this ad nauseum. We were trying to get people, when the permits were free, Yes, there was confusion. Why do I need it? The house got taken away. Exactly what we're talking about now. Nothing has changed. The answer has not changed. Now, if legally we aren't supposed to be doing that, we'll certainly have that discussion and get it figured out. And I'll make sure I talk to Becky when I leave here to find out if that is the case. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
Okay. So on the permitting, how are you feeling about how permitting overall is going?
The wrong direction.
It's going in the wrong direction.
In my opinion, and I've said it, I'll keep saying it. I think we were going in the right direction. I think that, as I said last time we talked last week, my emails were not filling up with anger. It was filling up with positive experiences. People felt welcome. They felt this. I don't know what has changed. And I've said this to Andy, and I said it last week on the show, and I'll say it again. I don't know what has changed, but we need to figure it out. Permitting is by far the most important thing we have going. It's never going to be 100%.
All right, folks. Sorry about that. We lost up, and Dan,
Is that what we're going with?
we did.
I don't know where we left off.
Actually, I forgot
to
to plug it in, which is so the computer lost power. So I know
See
my
what happens
computer
when
doesn't
Kim's
last
gone?
an hour.
Kim's
Thank
gone.
God
Things
she's
go
not
to-
here.
Go to a handbag.
I started the show on Saturday forgetting to unmute the microphone. So
Yeah, I saw that. I saw
that was a fun
And then now you're putting
experience.
things upside down.
So you were talking about the permitting, and what I wanted to ask you was on a scale of 1 to 10, because I asked Andy this also, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. Where is the permitting department in your mind right now?
I would probably agree with what Andy said, right around a 6. You know, we have to get back to at least where we were. If you had asked me this a few months ago, I would have said we were at maybe a 7. People and maybe trending the right direction. I don't know if this went through in my filibuster in the last before your power went out, but I pulled a lot of permits in a lot of places, and I've never once found a perfect permitting department. Everybody, I guarantee you, Lee County has their issues. I guarantee you, other municipalities have their issues. We certainly have our issues, but how do you address the low-hanging fruit? How do you make it so that it's easier for the person that has never had to deal with permitting in their life, now has to either rely on what they're being told from their contractor, or if they're pulling their own permit, the process that they have to go through, because the process has changed from what it was. And you hear this from, I talk to all kinds of people who are pulling all kinds of permit, and I've said this before 1,000 times. I will look up anybody's permit and help you through the process as best I can. Not because I have a bunch of time, but because I know it's very difficult to do. And the process has changed since the storm. There's cost forms now. There's things that you never had to do before. I had one the other day. I had someone that had reached out, and they got their rejection letter, and their rejection letter was very specific about what they needed. They reapplied, but when they reapplied, they didn't give exactly what was asked. And I will tell you that I think that the rejection letter could have been more specific as to what they were specifically asking for. And it's something that we've talked about several times, whether it's windows, shutters, whatever. People don't know what they can look up a number and say, this is the number that I'm using, but that's not what staff is there for. Staff is not there to take the time to research a PDF document that says if it meets the requirements of wind rating or loads or things like that. So they're asking for that information. We have to do a better job of relaying that if there is a rejection letter. And I took the time to say, Stephen, it was I believe it was Stephen that I'm talking about. And I sent him an example. This is what they're looking for specifically from you. It's a PDF of the hardy board siding that you're putting on there. This is the requirements. Yes, you put on there, your contractor put on there that this was, you know, we need more information, and your contractor put on there the Florida approval number, but staff does not have the time to go research what that number is specifically for that piece of product. So I try to say it as much as I can. Inundate your permit application with more information than you think that you need,
And then
Because
keep
if
an
you-
eye on it.
because if you do that up front, even if you think it's not important, put it in there,
Yeah.
because the town staff will look past it if they don't need it. But if it's not there, and another thing that I agree with, and I've said this from the beginning, is our process needs to be when you go through, you should go through the entire review process, and then you get the rejection letter of everything that fails. Not you failed this, it goes back. You give it to them, now you go through, now it fails this, then it goes back. Then that's too much time that's too much staff time. That's too much homeowner or builder time. It's just, I don't know how we get to that. I don't know how Steve and his team puts that in place, if it's more people, but I can guarantee you, I've stressed to Andy over the last couple of weeks, we have to fix this. This is the number one important priority by far in the town. And until we get it back to at least where it was and continue moving that process forward, I'm going to keep harping. I'm going to keep nagging, and I'm going to keep pushing, because if I'm getting emails because things are screwed up or not going the right way, I promise you I'm going to pass that along.
So we have 10 minutes. Wanted to end a little bit early so we could catch what Amy and Rick have to say. And I wouldn't do this if Kim was here, because, you know, I love most of the people that watch our show. But Phil, you complain about everything, bro. I mean, you bitch about everything. Every email you send is a complaint. And now you're complaining that we're sitting in front of a window. Dude, is just relax, man. If you don't want to watch the show, don't watch the show. I mean, I just don't care. It's just it complains about everything, the guy. So tomorrow night, the chamber members are going to get their first look, I think it's tomorrow night, of the Neptune.
Okay.
Have you seen the proposal for the Neptune?
I have.
And do you think it will pass?
I shared my concerns with them. I've tried to be consistent with everyone that I've met that has come forward with showing a design in explaining that, until you see a full development order or what you're really proposing, because what someone shows you when you sit in a meeting with them and what actually comes forth to the council or to the staff to review to bring to the council could be 100% different between the time. So I could say that, yeah, I like this. I don't like that. I think you're gonna have a problem with this. I think you're gonna have a problem with that. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. So I've tried to be as clear and concise as I can without giving my opinion on if I would approve it or not approve it, because I can't tell you by a rendering if I'm going to approve. There's too much detail involved to be able to say, yes, I think that's good. So yes, have I seen it? Yes, it's some of the things I like, some of the things I don't like. I've shared that with Patrick and the people from the Neptune. I don't know where they're at now. It's been a couple weeks, so I guess we'll see what comes out of it.
Is what you've seen, does it fit into the rules now?
No.
Okay. So it seems to me like things have kind of quieted down too with all the bigger developments. I haven't heard much. Maybe it's just because it was July, but it seemed like it's been kind of slow.
I mean, this is a long process. I think Mark from London Bay was very good at speaking to how long the process actually really takes. And, today I think we took a good step in saying how FAR should be calculated. I think there was a consensus from the council today to say that this makes sense. Move forward. Hopefully that gives a little bit of clarification to those that want to come forward and decide what they want to do. But I think we need to do more of that. I think we need to now address other things like height and density. And again, I've said it and I'll continue to say it. Our comp plan hasn't been tested, and
it will be.
Well, sure it will be. And people have a method to be able to go through the CPD process to be able to ask for the maximum allowed by the comp plan as it currently is. If someone wants to come through a CPD process, as we discussed today, and ask for a comp plan amendment, they certainly can. It's within their right. Doesn't mean it'll get approved, but you have to have those conversations.
The thing that was a little depressing with Mark from London Bay on Friday was he said that even if he got everything approved, it'd be 4 years before anything opened on that property. It was like, wow, I'll be dead by then. 4 years. I'll never be able to go and have a drink there.
I'm just wondering how many times you have gone to the bathroom in that amount of time.
Wow. I mean, it's just the way it is, though. I mean, it's a long process.
That's a large piece of property, and that's a large development. And what it takes to put that together and design it and work through the process takes time. It's I think, as Councilor or Vice Mayor Adderholt has said it, we have a functioning island now. We have Diamond Head. We have other places that are open. Margaritaville will be opening soon, hopefully. We have a functioning island. We have a beautiful beach. We have things that people can still come and enjoy, but you have to have realistic expectations. You have to understand that. I mean, I've gotten emails from someone saying it's been 10 months. I can't believe you don't have all the buildings back yet. Obviously, you've never swung a hammer in your life, because
that's crazy, right there.
10 months. It's like we're still cleaning up debris. The town hall is just coming down. So you have to have realistic expectations and things that take time to design and take things that come down. It's not a race. It is a we need to become what we want to become. We need to be the vision that the new Fort Myers Beach is going to be.
Well, the London Bay thing too will be interesting to watch, because I'm just giving my opinion from our interview. It sounded like if you want the nice little community bar atmosphere and that feel that you had before, I'm going to need a little height. And, if I don't get the height, I'll just build condos. They're selling for, $5 million right next door, because, you can get his money back in condos. So that's going to be interesting.
And, that's the good thing. And I've said it and I'll say it again. Is most of the people that I've met with have been very open about what does the community need? What does the community want? And I try to talk to as many people as I can, as often as I can, to find out what is their temperature as far as height and density and FAR and all these things. And people will tell you. If you ask them, they'll tell you. And then you can challenge them. Well, if you did this, would you be okay with that? Yeah, but, so getting through that process is going to be difficult. And I don't admire any developer that's trying to move forward through what we have. They're not stupid people. They understand what the rules are in place. They don't close on properties unless they know that they could do something. I would think that could be beneficial. May not be instant, may not be something that you get back your return in 2 years, maybe 4 years, but that's something that they have to work through. We have to be very clear on where we stand when it comes to the current comp plan and land development code. And I think that between the LPA and the council, we've tried to make that as clear as we possibly can. Now, it doesn't mean you won't look at CPDs and as they come forward and what makes sense, and the community will weigh in and we'll go from there. But globally, I don't think that there's a want or a need from the community to change from what we have.
5 minutes. So what do you want to give updates on? Oh, did you want to announce that you're going to run for council right now on this show for next year? I asked Veach the same thing, but he wouldn't.
Did you? I know.
He said he had to go talk to his wife.
Yeah.
She's right here, so you can't say you need to go talk to her. I think there's no doubt you're running, right? You could just say it now and get it out of the way.
Honestly, Ed, I don't know.
Oh, cut the crap.
No, I'll be completely honest
Yeah.
with you. I mean, it's a big job. It's
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do it right, it to be one of the 5 people up there making a decision after something that we all went through. It was a full-time job beforehand if you want to do it right. Whether you were a council member or a mayor or vice mayor, it didn't matter. It was a full-time job. Now it's exemplified. And everyone on that council is trying to rebuild their lives just like everyone else, and it takes time. And you apply your energy where you can, and it does take a lot of energy. And sometimes you're beat down, sometimes you're tired, sometimes you're energized, so we go through the same exact things that every single resident goes through. So to sit here and tell you that yes, I want 100% do this, I can't tell you that, because I don't know. I mean, like everyone else, we lost everything that we spent 50 years trying to accumulate.
Mhm.
We lost the business that we just started. We lost our vehicles. We lost everything. I've had, we're dealing with the same thing that every single other person is dealing with. So I can't tell you 6 months from now where I'm going to be. Am I going to still be at the same point where most people are, and their savings account is going backwards, not forwards? I mean, some people have to take out a lot of, so I don't know.
I get it.
Can't answer.
2 minutes. Did we miss anything that you want the community to know? I know we don't even need to ask about Bayside Park anymore. We heard today that it's going to be open by Labor Day. So
no, and I appreciate you stepping up and helping relieve some of that. What's going to happen on the 1-year anniversary, working with staff to try to get that worked out. That relieves a lot of pressure for myself, for other council members, for the staff.
Yeah, just to give everyone an update on that, Kim is in charge of the gift. We're inviting all the families of the folks that lost their lives on September 28th to come to Bayside Park. We have a list of speakers that we're working together on organizing, and we're going to donate the gift to in front of the families to the town, and the town will decide where it goes. And she's come up with some really good ideas, and she's talking to folks that lost their loved ones to get input from them so that it could be really nice.
Yeah, I really hope that the 1-year event is one about remembering who we lost and where we came from, but very much positive about where we're going, what we've accomplished over the last year, what we hope to accomplish over the next year. Keep moving that forward, keep moving that hope forward, keep moving that, every time you see a piling go on the ground, a new house come out, that you're moving forward. And when an old building comes down that is no longer, that's progress. It may not be the fastest progress on the planet, but we're trying to set the bar, should this ever happen again, for people to look back and say, Fort Myers Beach had its struggles, whether it was their own doing or whether it was something outside of their control. But this is what we did to try to get better. And here's where we learned from our mistakes, how we can help you get better. So that's what we're trying to do. And I think that we're doing a very good job. I think the staff is doing a very good job. I think the public outreach that you provide, as well as our PIO Jenny and the information that we're trying to get out, we try to get as much information as we can, because, knowledge is key. And the more that people know and the more that we can help them, the faster we can get these things done, and but doing it the right way.
All right, Dan, thanks a lot. We'll be back
Absolutely.
next Monday. We'll be back from Wisconsin, so we'll be doing our remote show, and you're
gonna be in a floaty, aren't you?
Not on Monday. I hope my flight, the whole flight thing was a nightmare the last time. So we're gonna.
Sorry about your brother.
Thank you. Appreciate that, and I appreciate John saying it today, and everybody's been great. We're gonna turn off here and then keep an eye on Amy and Rick, and then broadcast that live for you guys to see, and we'll watch it here. So thanks a lot. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.